Joining us now, Pete Hegseth, Fox & Friends weekend co-host, a great friend who served in the Afghan and Iraqi theaters. Pete, what is just in your gut, what is bothering you the most about this tragic story?
Well, first of all, very well said with everything you. What's bothering me the most is the unwillingness to take any responsibility.
No.
I almost want to start where Biden ended. He ended with a future that is safer. On what planet does he think that our security is better today than it was a year ago or 2 years ago? It's not. You have a legitimized terror state. And then he walked around the entire speech, and you said it so well, blaming everybody else. I mean, a huge section of it was blame Trump, as if he didn't have other alternatives later on. And then he spent a vast majority of the speech, frankly, debating a straw man, that there are people that don't want to get out of Afghanistan. Everyone agrees it was time to go. It is the manner in which we left that we take issue with. And where he started the speech was only the U.S. has the capacity, Larry. Only the U.S. has the capacity to airlift this many people. That means only the U.S. has the capacity to not have to do it this way. We didn't have to. We were the power brokers on the ground, and we chose not to use it. And he wants to say it was extremely successful. His words. I think history will judge otherwise.
That's the thing. There were clear, concrete, discrete decisions. I'm going to argue, Pete, just from my experience inside the governmental process, issues like this wind their way to the Oval Office. The National Security Council, of which I was a member, but the National Security Council is in charge of the government-wide effort. So that's the military, right, the Joint Chiefs. That is the whole Defense Department. That's the State Department. That's the CIA and the intelligence agencies, et cetera. He made these decisions. Don't tell me he didn't have his faculties, because I don't believe that. He can get up and make a speech. He knows the difference, between day and night and all that stuff. He made these decisions. Why were so many mistakes made? Bagram, why didn't we take the mullah's invitation and run Kabul instead of letting them? Why didn't we run the checkpoints at the airport? Why didn't we clear a path so Americans and our allies could have gotten to the Kabul airport, the Karzai airport? In other words, there were clear decisions along the way. Why didn't he stay another week? The whole world wanted him to stay another week. In order to get more people out. Why?
And then he has those are the key questions, and he has the audacity. He stood in front of the American people and said, 90% of American citizens that wanted to get out could get out. 90% is the solution now? 5,000 Americans got out. I do my quick math. Does that mean 500 Americans who wanted to get out are now in Taliban-controlled Kabul? Of course, set aside his mental faculties, which he may not be as sharp as he should be, but that's a side note. He made these calls. He made the calls. He says there was a consensus amongst the national security establishment on every single one of those calls. Was it a real consensus, or were dissenting voices pushed aside? You're not needed here anymore. The decision is to leave based on a timeline. He had the audacity to say, we decided to leave on August 31st, which has nothing to do with a deadline. That is the definition of a deadline. My suspicion is, and he said this, I told the generals I want to leave by August 31st. Guess what the generals did? They left by August 31st, and it was a mess. And the fact that the Pentagon, one of two choices Pentagon leadership has. Either they need to own up to the responsibility of all the bad decisions you talked about. Why would we not stop the Taliban from coming into the Capitol if they offered us the opportunity to secure it? Why would we not hold on to Bagram Air Base? So if they didn't make those recommendations, they should be held to account for making the wrong recommendations. Or they didn't agree, didn't say anything, which is even worse when you're in that position of responsibility with that much knowledge and expertise on warfare, supposedly, and you don't speak up.
I am also troubled. He says there was a consensus. Now, there's so many reports from liberal media, conservative media. We report, you decide, but it just was coming from both sides that the Pentagon didn't like this, Austin didn't like this, the Joint Chiefs didn't like this, especially that the intel agencies were providing Biden with much different intel about the outcome. And then finally, you recall the diplomats, quote unquote, the CIA people in the Kabul embassy, the American embassy, were telling him that the end was coming real fast and the Taliban were going to take, and he ignored that. So I just wondered here, maybe there's a handful of people around him. They made the decisions together. Or maybe nobody had the guts to say, no, sir. No, this is bad. This is a bad idea. We need to rethink this. What do you think about that?
You would know better having been in those rooms. But I do know, thinking back to the Trump administration, if the intern in the back of the room so much as disagreed, the world knew about it. Right? I mean, it's
I
it's a
sometimes
fact.
disagree.
I'm sure you did.
O'Brien sometimes disagreed.
And the world found out
Mnuchin
about it.
sometimes disagreed. Honestly, we did it politely and respectfully, and we would have a back and forth with the boss.
He said there was a consensus. I want to know who disagreed and when.
Yeah.
And how adamantly did they disagree?
Yeah.
And if they didn't speak up then, why not? And if they thought it was the wrong decision, why didn't they step up even more strongly? I think we have a serious problem in generalship in this country, our general.
That'll be our book. We'll get some help from some report. That'll be our book. It'll be a terrific book. We have to find out who was in those meetings.
Who knew what
There'll
and
be
when.
freedom of information. There'll be FOIA publication of the schedules of who was in the Oval Office at the time. Because this business about everyone agreed. That's been, look, NATO didn't agree.
No.
Britain, Boris Johnson didn't agree. He's not a hawk, he's a dove. Emmanuel Macron of France, he's not a hawk, he's a dove. None of them agreed. So who agreed?
You can't spend 20 years in the Pentagon arguing for conditions-based withdrawals,
Right.
which every general I've ever met has advocated for,
Right.
and then suddenly be in favor of a fixed deadline that you can't change.
See, that was Trump's argument. He made it again today on our network. This idea of blaming Trump. So I love, first of all, Trump wanted conditions. He said if you didn't meet the conditions, we'd have bombed the hell out of him. That's what he said, believe it or not. And, you know, I think people would have feared Trump. But
I agree.
The other point is Biden has changed and reversed every other Trump policy, including my tax cuts. So why all of a sudden does he have to have this fidelity to the Trump withdrawal plan? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't hold water, right?
It doesn't hold water at all. I don't think it's going to hold water with people. They want to see a commander-in-chief that takes responsibility. They didn't want to see someone looking into the camera saying, Trump made me do it. I'm a slave to his deadline, which I then also changed. They don't buy it. And instead of saying, I'll bomb you to kingdom come, as Donald Trump would likely say.
I think he would have said that.
I'm sure he would have said that. Joe Biden stood at the podium today and said, there will be a strongly worded Security Council resolution waiting for you if you don't stand up to your obligations.
That's the point.
Something makes me think the Taliban won't care about that.
Pete Hegseth, as a veteran who served in Iraq and Afghanistan, in your gut, what do you want to happen next? What do you think is possible? We want to redeem America here. We love America. We're patriots. What can be done?
We do want to redeem America.
Yeah.
We are patriots. We don't want to be on bended knee, which is the feeling that we have right now.
Right.
I think Afghan vets are going to continue to be the heroes of this story, helping our allies out of that country. Through rat lines and other, and you even heard Joe Biden mention that in the speech. Without what our nation's veterans did to leave no one behind, the operation he touts so much would never have had the numbers that it had. So I still have so much faith in Afghan vets and others who refuse to let the promises be broken that this administration did.
We have Bing West, Colonel Bing West, come on with the pineapple pathway out
Operation Pineapple.
and other private sector efforts. Maybe that's the best way. That's the American way. Pete Hegseth, nobody better.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.